everyone, and welcome to We Watch Bad Films, the podcast where we watch bad films so you don't have to. I'm Gary, and with me is Jay.
Hello.
And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so at Instagram at We Watch Bad Films or at Twitter at We Watch Bad Films. And if you like this so much, perhaps sling us a Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/WWEF pod. Get out some Amazon rentals and find some more films. Even suggest films for us that you think we would, I would say, enjoy. That's not the right word, but listen to, talk about, that sort of thing. Jay, what have you been watching this week?
I'm just laughing at the fact that we may enjoy some of those films. Experience is the word, rather enjoy. I watched Following by Christopher Nolan, which I wanted to watch for a long time.
So that's a feature that isn't a cinematic release, is that right?
Yes, it is his first film. I mean, it's a feature film, but actually I think it's not even, it's only just over an hour long, so I don't think it was released at the cinema. So 1998, as far as I can tell, he directed it over the course of a year, sort of on his weekends when he was working. Super micro zero budget type thing. As far as I also can tell, what money he was going to get for it, he used to pay for the 16mm film which it was shot on. He also, in order to save money and save film, they would rehearse the hell out of each scene and only record 15 minutes worth of film. And they would get it absolutely dead on correct, which is quite an interesting way of making a film, really, isn't it? If you think about it.
Which I understand due to the cost of film. I mean, compare that to now where, any of us can dick about for 20 minutes and just record anything and then save 4 seconds of it on our mobile phones, or even better equipment than that can just record practically infinitely for nothing.
Yes, and some of the new telephones, the cameras on those, I mean, are better than the TV cameras of about 20 years ago. You get the idea.
Yeah. I mean, there are films that have been released that were shot entirely on cell phones. The one names of which escape me right now, but there was definitely one.
Tangerine.
There was also one where they did an effect shot entirely on a mobile phone because it was easier to tape it to a bicycle or something. It was to rig up any other kind of effect shot. Anyway, I digress. So Christopher Nolan really working with what he's got there. What's the premise?
He likes his. He basically makes films which are a bit like novels, really, a bit like Quentin Tarantino, where he has a linear plot and then he cuts it all up and shakes the timeline around. So it starts almost at the end, and there's a character who's being interviewed by the cop, and he's asking him to explain how these crimes happened, and then it flits around the timeline, goes back in time, goes a bit forward in time, etc., etc. It's basically, I'm not going to say too much in case people want to watch it, but it's basically about a guy who follows people. We never really know why. He just follows people, and he chooses one person on a particular day and he follows him, and he says to the cop who's interviewing him, I made a mistake, I followed him to his work and to his home. He keeps following this particular man, and he follows him to a cafe. The man comes up to him and says, I know you're following me, and he says, why don't you come with me and see what I actually am doing? And he follows the guy, and the guy is a burglar, but he doesn't look like a burglar. He dresses in a suit. He comes across as a quite well-off, successful guy. But that's his ruse, and he takes the original man. I forget their names, but we'll go with that. And he shows him how he burgles people, and they become a duo, a team. He gets embroiled in the life of a woman whom he meets on one of his raids. She is the girlfriend of a crime boss. And as the film goes on, you start to realize things are not as they seem. And
so I was about to ask there, can you tell from watching this the kind of films Christopher Nolan was going to create, or the kind of signature Christopher Nolan things? And it sounds already like there is, there's very rarely you get the full story meted out to you, and it's not often predictable either.
Yeah. Well, his next film after this was Memento. So if
Yeah.
you guys have seen Memento,
It's
it's a
the
similar.
ultimate non-linear storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. It's similar to Following, but on steroids. It's so complicated and clever and well done.
Oh, but can I say, although it's complicated, that doesn't mean it's difficult to follow at all. It's just my head hurts trying to figure out how he made it an enjoyable linear experience, Memento.
Yeah, but it's similar to Following because it's only about 3 or 4 main characters, and it's about one storyline which is chopped up over time, and you keep going forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. So that's where it's similar to Following, and you can definitely tell that the story starts to turn in on itself, and characters you realise start to be more interconnected than they initially seemed. That's as far as I'm going to go.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Now, you are describing a classic Christopher Nolan type storytelling method.
Yeah, and Following is definitely, like we've discussed before, Christopher Nolan films, it's definitely all about the story, not about the characters. I mean, there are barely any characterizations in Following. That's why I couldn't remember the name of any of the characters.
Which is also true of many Christopher Nolan works. You find it hard to remember the individual characters. Taken to the extremes, if you dial back to one of our episodes, Tenet, of course, what's the main guy in Tenet called, Jay?
The protagonist.
Indeed, yeah, that's the ultimate cipher, isn't it? And the ultimate way of saying, I don't need to care about these people.
And also, the film is scuppered by some slightly under par acting. These are just literally his friends, more or less. And some scenes are kind of let down by poor acting. I really could see this film being remade by him with some stellar acting and a bit of oomph behind it. I think it would be a really great film. As it stands, it's a really good debut film and has a lot of potential. I think it's worth watching. It's flawed, but on the whole, I think it's good. I think a few directors saw it and pointed him out as being a talent to watch, and they were correct.
One of the most financially successful directors of the past 20 years.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's, yeah, I recommend it. I recommend it.
Yeah, I found it interesting actually. Recently, people were saying about that Tenet disappointed at the box office. Let's not forget it launched in the summer of 2020 when pretty much nobody returned to the cinema. Now, people look back at that number and say, that's a pretty good number to reach, considering where we are now.
Yes. I mean, yeah, and there haven't been many films released this year either, but there have been a few things released, and I'm talking mainly cinematically, but I've not really watched anything of the size of Tenet.
Well, what's interesting is this is not really about this, but I watched Jungle Cruise this week, but I watched it through Disney's Premier Pass, which is on top of paying for Disney Plus, you pay extra, so they get you twice. Now, that's not cheap in itself, but good if you're taking a family to watch it. However, I note that Disney have already announced a sequel, which tells you something about the future of dual cinema and premium pay subscriptions.
Yeah, I can't really tell how this is going to go in the future, but as it stands, it looks like this is going to be the way. Are you worried about cinemas, Gary? If you were a cinema owner?
I guess I'd be worried if I was a cinema owner, but I don't think it's a long-term problem. I've long said you should be able to give the consumer the choice they want to do. Do you want to go to the multiplex and enjoy it en masse in a community? I've had the pleasure of going to the cinema a few times since the lockdown ended, and I've really enjoyed that communal atmosphere of watching a film together with strangers. And enjoying the hush and the being trapped by the screen. It's been really, really fun. And yet at the same time, there are some films which perhaps you don't need that bar for, or you'd much rather be sat on your sofa for, and you're happy to pay a little premium to watch that instead. So I think this can continue, and we'll just have this dual stream. Largely, it depends what Marvel and Disney end up wanting to do, because after all, they dominate the blockbuster market. But it's titles below that which I think are interesting. Titles which would struggle to find a cinema audience.
Yeah, someone who would agree with you is Edgar Wright, the director of things like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, who really is trying to get people back to cinemas. Or to remember that going to the cinema is a specific event which you can't replicate at home, which I objectively agree with. I think I actually bought myself a ticket to go and watch Denis Villeneuve, who's doing the new Dune film. He's actually got a season at the I think the National Film Theatre in London, and they're re-releasing all of his past films at the cinema. Now,
Brilliant.
I don't think I've seen any of his films at the cinema, and they really are very cinematic. So I'm going to go and see his first film, Incendie, which is French. I may have mispronounced that, but he's a French Canadian, so that's why it's in French. But I really wanted to see at least one of those films at the cinema. So I'm looking forward to going back to the cinema, but I'm not sure how it's going to go in the next few months, 18 months, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I think we'll see a winnowing of some of the chains. I don't think they will all be able to survive in their current capacities, and will lose a couple along the way. And I don't think they'll be replaced, which will be a shame. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer in giving the consumer the choice of the way they want to consume the media.
I think that is not a bad thing. I think some of these massive chains really have monopolized cinema going. Some of them are too expensive. I understand why they charge for that, but what I really would like to see is still some of these independent cinemas going, so ones who put on films that they want to watch as well as mainstream films, put on a little bit of a personal touch to the way that they choose. We'll see what happens.
And re-releases as well. I've said for years, I mean, we're not really blessed with one in the area, but I've always wanted a cinema chain in my local area that would do little runs of things, like, e.g., a really obvious choice, doing all the Star Wars films, for example, over a couple of weeks, or picking a director and just doing that, and things like that. We only get multiplexes in our area, so that's all you get. But it'd be really nice to have an independent cinema that didn't just thrive on tentpole releases, but could go by on more curated picks as well.
Yeah, just want a little shout out to the Duke of York's Picture House in Brighton, which is the oldest purpose-built cinema in the United Kingdom, maybe the world, certainly in the UK. I'm just going to say the UK. And they put on little festivals, curate director festivals and stuff like that. And it's these little cinemas who really are jewels and should be looked after if possible.
Yes, I'd love that. So, from Christopher Nolan, are we going to watch another of Christopher Nolan's films this week, Jay?
I think you know the answer to that question, Gary, and that's because no, because in a Christopher Nolan film, this would already be halfway through, and you already know what's going to happen, even though it's the beginning of the film. Timelines all over the place. No, we're not going to watch Christopher Nolan. We're going to watch a terrible, bad film, Gary.
Oh, jolly good. What's that going to be then?
Well, like I've said to you recently, I'm a big fan of Arrow Video, who are Arrow Films and Arrow Video. They are a film releasing company, and they release on Blu-ray, and they do loads of really cool extras, and I love them. I've been listening to their podcasts recently, and the guys from the Arrow Video podcasts were chatting on one of their episodes recently about some crazy films that they've been watching and some good bad films. And I've watched some of the crazy films that they suggested. What we're going to watch is Stickfighter, 1994.
Okay, it does sound like a game rather than a film, but okay.
It also sounds a little bit like Dick Fighter.
Well, that's another film entirely. Okay, well, let's not beat around the bush with our dick fighting. You go and listen to a trailer for it. We'll go and watch it, and we'll tell you what you thought on the other side.
Hey, bud, this is my table.
Look, I don't want to fight about it.
Why not?
You'll get hurt. Heads, I win. Tails, you lose.
I barely got away myself, all right?
You had a second shot with this cop, and then you split. Bring me Charlie.
Well, I'll be goddamn. Stick me.
You want me to get a stick?
No, George, I don't think you'll have to get the stick.
You're out of control, man.
I quit.
You're a little stunt, and Alex's death sealed my career. Bad guys always win anyway.
Bad guys don't always win, asshole.
Lambert.
Do you do this every day?
Today's my day off.
So that was possibly 1994's or 1997's Stickfighter. We'll debate that in a minute. Yeah, that was a martial arts film. And do you know what? When it comes to a martial arts film, I feel like not running down the plot anymore just because they're all the same. Hey, guess what? He's a cop. Him and his partner do a thing. His partner gets shot. But the guy in the thing also gets hurt, and that causes them to have a price on his head. He runs about and eventually kills the crime agency. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter. It's just a sequence of fights.
Yeah, there is no real plot. It's basically it's a classic. They go to a crime heist. The partner gets shot, and then it's a revenge film, and that's it. That is really it, isn't it? In this film,
that is it. There's nothing more to it at all than that. There was nothing more added to that. That is literally what I get. I actually felt like the script was a cop movie script generator robot, just churning out all the cliches from his police chief at the start.
Yeah, actually, before we go anywhere with this film, right in the first 5, 3, 2 minutes, he quits. Right? That's what he throws his badge down. He says, "You're going to be suspended," and then he goes, "Well, I can do one better," and he throws his badge down and he throws his gun down, and then he's not a cop anymore. Right? That's what happened. And then, but in the rest of the film, he's called a cop. Other police officers refer to him as a police officer, and in fact, he's arrested by some cops. And he says, "Go in my pocket. Look, you'll see there's my badge." And they go, "Oh yeah, he's a cop."
Yep.
What was going on there?
Not a lot, I don't think. So let's be quite clear. I think this is a film, yet again, by someone who's quite good at martial arts, who wants to show everyone else he's quite good at martial arts by recording himself doing a load of martial arts.
This is definitely what's the Irish kung fu film that we watched?
Fatal Deviation.
It's the same film. It's just
it's a show reel.
Exactly. A guy with big muscles who thinks he's all that. Wants to show off that he can do lots of kicks and he's got big muscles. That's basically it, isn't it?
Yeah, and big hair and a big gut as well. He had quite a paunch, considering what he does.
Oh, yeah, talking about his hair, he's got one of those early 90s, late 80s, but early 90s mini afro mullets. Mini afro.
How many times have we said the word mullet on this podcast? It's quite a lot.
Particularly with late 80s, early 90s and martial arts, they all go hand in hand. All that was missing was cowboy boots. There was no. He actually was wearing trainers.
Yeah. So the year. Now, there's something going on with the year of this. So it's credited as 1994 on IMDb, but the actual closing part of the film says it's 1997, the actual title. And there are songs in there that are credited to 1996. So I don't know what's going on there.
Already shod-tastic. Nobody knows what's going on.
Well, do you know what the first clue was that it was Shod-tastic? It was the name of the distributor. What was the name of the distributor, Jay?
Yes, I know. Pan Am Pictures, as in the airline company.
Yes. Yeah. That was the first, like, huh? They have a film library?
Pan Am Pictures, who also are not going anymore, right? There is no Pan Am.
No, long gone.
It was like, what is this? Is this going to be Airplane 3? What is this? This is not boding well. It's like you putting on a film and then all of a sudden Ford Pictures presents Mitsubishi. This is not right. Airlines and films should not mix. So that was already a bad start.
I mean, so you're a martial arts guy. Apparently, this Kely McClung, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, his name is terrible. It's
Kely McClung.
Kely McClunky or
Okay, Kely McClunky. You know, the Irish fiddler. Also does a spot on Grange Hill.
Kely McClung.
I still can't tell if you're telling the truth. Kely McClung. Even though he is an actual Ultimate Fighting Stick Championship, because apparently there's a thing called stick fighting, and then sort of parlayed this wonderful success into making a film. But the sad part is that all the fight scenes in this are so slow and gentle.
Yeah, they really are. He's not bad. He's not a bad fighter, but
no,
everything
clearly
is shot in slow motion. So any kind of excitement or atmosphere or pizzazz is sucked bone dry out of each shot.
Let's be clear. They're not shot in slow motion. The guys are just slow that he's working with. So anytime anything happens, they're really slow to react. When you think, I just turn around and punch him in the face, mate.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of scenes which were actually in slow motion. I vaguely remember.
There were, but we'll come back to those because one of those is rather special. But the just general tomfoolery and bum kickery was all just slowly sort of flick kicking them, you know, or wrapping their arm over the head. He liked that one, and then pulling them backwards so they fell over.
There's a few good moves. There's one where he kicks over the guy's head and then he brings his leg down on top of the head, and then he does with his other leg. He does a little heel kick like a little annoyed donkey to the head.
Yes. Yeah, there's some innovation there, definitely. But again, because it's not ever cut or edited, it happens quite slowly. Plenty of time for him to get dusted on his ass.
Okay, before you go any further, the editor needs kicking, basically. The editor, this film, for all of its pros, really suffers from a nice judicial edit. It needs to be cut down. But I think I know why some of these scenes go on. It's because it lasts exactly 90 minutes. And there isn't enough storyline for 90 minutes. So what they've done is they've dragged everything out and left scenes a little bit too slow and too long. And so everything's slow.
So you say there's not enough for 90 minutes. There's so little for 90 minutes. They repeat two scenes, right, where they go into a strip club and then him and the girl interest go to a bedroom. There's a scene like 20 minutes later. They go to a strip club and then him and the girl go to a bedroom.
Okay, I think this always happens in these films. I start to slightly zone out because I'm just in awe of what's going on screen. Yeah, was that a different strip club? There were a lot of strip clubs.
Now you're asking me. I don't know if it's a different strip club, but it was definitely. It's not a film that needs two strip club scenes anyway.
Right. Okay. So on this subject, I've written the most notes I have ever written for any film that we've ever done before. I've got 8 flipping pages of notes. I am not joking. And the amount of times I've written the word tits just is off the scale, Gary. This is the reason we watch these films, right? My God, it is Tits the movie. This is the most tits we've ever seen, and particularly when they go to the strip club, which was called...
I don't know.
It was called the Golden Pussy.
Of course it was.
I think it was the Golden Pussy Cat, but yeah, it's the Golden Pussy Cat, but the Golden Pussy is just as good, really. Even before they get to the strip club, but my God, when they walk into that strip club, which seems to be for no particular reason other than just here's looking at women's breasts. That's the only reason. Lots of tits.
Oh, no. I tell you what the reason is. It's another scene where guys can line up to get kicked in the face by Kely McClung.
Yeah. Yeah, but what I'm saying is he could have done it in the supermarket, but no, has to be
Supermarket's too expensive.
Tits and Kicks is what this film should have been called.
If it was a supermarket, we're back at Fatal Deviation, don't forget.
The danger of Londis.
Netto abuse. Yeah.
I just want to mention, do you remember in the very first scene, Gary, where he and his partner kick down the door and there's loads of bad guys and he starts reading them their rights as he's kicking each different bad guy. He kicks one, then he kicks the other, and with each kick he reads another part of their rights to them.
Yeah, it's just how they're taught to do it in law school, and that's how Miranda does it.
Oh God. What about the music, Gary? Can I talk about the music?
Yeah, I mean, even over the fighting, they just play the most god-awful music.
James Tunnell.
James who?
James Tunnell is the composer.
Tunnell.
Yeah, and I felt like I got trapped in a tunnel listening to his music.
It's just so it's so Bon Tempi organ, isn't it? He's able to play his keyboard, so he does. Music is generally a really bad fit everywhere. Over fight scenes, you know. Oh.
And also, I don't know where it's written, but I think it's made law when you go to film school that panpipe sounds equals Asia.
Speaking of music and speaking of the years, I was looking at the credits for some of the songs, and one of them was called I Like the Way You Touch Me, which is lovely. Credited to Big Teabag Productions, which, you know, not a label I'm familiar with.
Oh my God, is that the song that sings about erections? Is that the Erection song?
I think I missed that one.
Okay, I'm just scrolling through my 57 million pages of notes to find what I wrote about it. Here we go. Bar scene number 2. Erection song. Tits. Erection rhymes with election. You got no zipper in your lipper. These are the lyrics.
I must have been too engrossed in the plot to notice that.
Well, Erection. Yeah, the guy's singing, and it cuts to the bar, and the song goes straight into something about erection. Something election. Got no zipper in your lipper.
I know the lyrics to one of the songs just said "Take your clothes off, take your clothes off" over and over again.
Yes, that's the other one. Yeah, because they go, like you said, they go back to this place many, many times. Song in bar, just take your clothes off. Take your clothes off. I like the way you touch me. I like the way you touch me. I like the way you touch me.
No, music in general was a real misstep in a film that has no good steps.
The worst bit was when the bad guy with the beady little eyes, who is called Mr. something
Riley?
or other. Yes, it. But then someone calls him Dr. Riley 2 seconds
Oh,
later.
okay. Right, I
So
missed that.
yeah. When he appears in a car and he comes to the gate of the bad guy, the main villain's complex, and the music when he arrives and he gets out of his car and he walks up to the front door is disgusting.
Good.
It is so bad. Do you remember the scene, Gary, where there was terrible sexy music and there was terrible sexy time going on, and he was intercut with murder and stabbing?
Yeah, I do. It's almost like they were so busy making love they couldn't hear the murder going on downstairs.
Oh my god, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And I'm not
So-
talking about the sexy time. I'm talking about the idea that you edit people getting killed with people doing sexy time.
I think you can, and we probably won't have to go too far in cinema to find that, but this was not done like that. It was not done for juxtaposition. It was just they were just cut together.
But the sexy time music went all over the murder time.
Yes. What a lovely sentence. So the bartender was getting beaten up. Did you know who the bartender was?
Yes, this is what I wanted to talk about. Now, when I saw him initially, I wrote down Jake the Snake wearing a tent.
Well, yes, there is that. It's got a touch of the Aurelian Smith about him.
I know who it is because I've just looked it up. Do you know? You obviously do.
I do know who it is. Yes, it's James Mitchum, son of Robert.
Yeah, and if you look at the picture of him on IMDb, wow, it really does.
Yeah, he's an absolute clone, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's quite strange because when he came on screen, I thought, apart from looking like Jake the Snake, you look familiar. You just have that face.
Yeah, I thought, well, he's bound to be one of those actors, that pops up for a couple of lines in a bunch of films, but you never know his name. But it turns out it's just because he looks so much like his dad.
And surprisingly, he's utterly awful.
Yep, the apple fell about a stone's throw from the tree.
Yeah, it was a mutated apple from another branch somewhere else. The other person I thought I had a vague recollection of, you look familiar, was the main actress, Alex Meneses.
Yes, so I've looked her up, and she's just been in hundreds of things. Never particularly a sort of famous or starring role, but she's one of those actresses that's just been around, and she's still acting now.
Yeah, she's been in CSI, lots of different CSIs, and maybe Xena Warrior Princess, loads of really famous TV shows, and maybe I must have seen her somewhere, but she has that look.
I'm thinking the same. In fact, that's the sole piece of IMDb trivia for this film, is that it's her debut feature. Now, it's the sole trivia for this film is that it's the debut feature of the actress you don't really know. It's not saying much for trivia, is it?
I've written so many notes that we're never going to be able to talk about this, but what that says to me is actually within each scene there was actually quite a lot going on. For example, when he gets taken to the police station, I simply must mention some of the background performers. Do you note any of these background performers?
No, I didn't notice. Go on.
Okay, there's some brilliant ones. There's one, oh my god. Do you remember Mrs. Adams?
No.
Mrs. Adams? Mrs. Adams, who looks like is dressed like a cross between a bedspread and a plucked chicken. Wearing a huge person, wearing a huge brightly coloured coat with loads of feathers coming off, and he's protesting to the police officer at the desk. As the camera's panning round, there's literally about 2 lines as they pan round. The police officer keeps calling this person Mrs. Adams, and he keeps saying Mrs. Adams, and she's like bemoaning something, and you can tell that it is a man dressed as a woman, and the police officer is using the term Mrs. Adams as a derogatory, you're a transvestite kind of thing. But it is bizarre and hilarious for about 3 seconds. Then there's another woman in a red dress who's standing by the telephone. I could do a whole episode on just the background actors. There's a woman in a red dress who's on the telephone. As the camera pans past and the main actors go past her, she picks up the telephone and starts whacking the telephone against the telephone booth. Oh, it's brilliant.
Well, if we're talking about things that are brilliant, I think there's one actually quite good stunt towards the end, and it's actually the very, very end. So after having a massive fight with the sub-boss, the main boss then gets in a car to attempt to drive down our beloved hero. And they do this shot from outside a warehouse where the actor or the stunt artist narrowly ducks out the way whilst the actual car barrels through and piles outside. It's actually quite a good stunt.
Yeah, and then what happens with the car? Something else really good happens?
Well, now this is, you've got to slow it down carefully, because I think the car then blows up. He then walks over to it and it's not on fire. He shoots the guy a few times, walks away, and then the car blows up.
Yeah, but what's good about that is that the main actor is actually walking in front of this car, which then explodes. But he's doing it like he's just literally looking at his watch. He looks so bored.
Just too cool for school. Yes.
Yeah. But the reason I kind of knew this was coming is because previously in the same scene, the main bad guy arrives in a squadron of cars, and he's in a Rolls Royce. And then all the other cars are old 70s cars, those kinds of American 70s cars that you always see in these kinds of films.
Yeah.
As he's escaping, he runs into his Rolls Royce, but he, for some reason, can't find his keys or something. And then he runs out and he goes into one of the cheaper cars and he drives off. That's because they couldn't afford to blow up the Rolls Royce. I knew it. I knew something was coming.
I do
Get
love
in
that.
the dodgy car,
I do love
then
that.
that will explode. Then that will explode. I love it when I see that. It's great fun.
In your 56 pages of notes, did you make a note of any quotes?
There's a great one when he's in the car with the main woman. We don't actually know who she is initially. She just turns up in a red car. And he says to her, "I can't believe how much you've changed." And she says, "The death of a brother will do that to you." And then she continues, "I'm sorry. I know he was your best friend. He was more than that." There's actually a really bad scene where they're both on the beach for some reason, and they're chatting to each other about how bad it is. There's a whole monologue that he does, which is awful, and I've just written the words "awful monologue." I think it goes
Not really
on,
a quote, is it?
but it goes on and on for ages.
I've also got, "I have the authority of justice."
Yes.
This reeks
What
of
about
Eric
this one?
Cartman.
What did you guys do? Come on a bus? You have to unpack that. I don't really know. Not really sure what he's going on about there.
So we've gone all this way, but we've not talked about the greatest scene in the film, which is where our hero is on a sort of mezzanine floor with 2 flights of stairs in front of him, zigzagging. And the camera goes to slow motion, and he vaults, double leg jumps over the banister to then land crotch first on the guy's face to push him to the floor.
I'm really trying not to laugh as you're explaining that, the visual imagery.
You did very well. Yeah, it's just this flying cock block. I don't know what it is.
If you're on the receiving end of that, all you're seeing is just someone's arse with their legs flailing upwards, coming towards your face.
Rey Mysterio does it. It looks okay when a guy in the 90s in sweatpants does it, jumping over a staircase in slow motion. Just looks weird. And not
but that's
particularly
not
painful. You might as well kick him in the face, right?
Or shoot him.
Yeah.
But that's not all that happens, is it? He then continues in that position, and he lands sitting on the man's chest, and he rides him down the stairs like a toboggan.
Yeah. The old teabag toboggan.
Oh wow, yeah, that came out of nowhere. That floored me. That really did.
It floored him too.
Yeah, there's one more quote that we haven't mentioned there, and that is the very last line of the film, which is, do you remember?
Oh no, hit me.
Donuts on me!
Yes. And who says that? It's a cop. Of course it's a cop.
Lieutenant, his name is Lieutenant Davies, and I've written down Lieutenant Davies is shit.
Well, that'll do it. Yeah. Jay, can you at all recommend Stickfighter from whatever year it's from?
I definitely can recommend Stickfighter, somewhere in the 90s. I think, like we discussed, it certainly does sag in the middle, and some of these scenes need some real juicy editing. But generally speaking, the sheer fact that I've written what looks to me like the New Testament in notes tells me that there's so much going on in some of these scenes that it's worth watching, and probably worth watching again. It might end up being one of those samurai cop type films. I think it's a good one.
It doesn't quite do it for me. I think if you want decent action, you might as well watch a proper action film or a proper martial arts film. There's not quite enough going on here between the set pieces for me. But, there's enough there. But I really thank the guys at Arrow Films on their podcast and on Twitter for recommending it to us. It was quite the journey.
Yeah, I recommend people watch it. I reckon it's going to be one of those ones which becomes quite well known as a terrible, terrible film. Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. There's no getting away from it, but it's worth watching. So I recommend.
That's the sign on the door. Did you agree with us? Get in touch with us over on Twitter or Instagram. Please do let us know what's going on and what we've missed. If there's any other films we should check out. But that's all from me. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much.
See you next time.
Bye.